All right. So I had originally thought this was going to be a very long session this morning, but I'm going to not have a long session this morning due to a variety of reasons, mostly that I have, by way of explanation, I wear many hats at Cabrillo. So as you might imagine, at Cabrillo, things are still kind of in disaster mode, crisis mode. And I'm in a bunch of meetings all the time because I'm an officer of the faculty union. I'm an officer of the faculty senate. I'm on the union negotiating team, and we're having emergency negotiating sessions about what's going on. And I mentioned I have the 4 other classes transitioning to online. And so I'm just a little overwhelmed, and I apologize for that, but this morning there's a particular conflict. So I will have to end this early. We won't go, we maybe go 45 minutes or so, and I will schedule more of these for this week and the following. But that leads me to my first question, which is, for those of you who are here and can make this, do you prefer in your schedule longer or shorter meetings? Longer meaning like a 3-hour class, shorter meaning like an hour class, maybe a few times a week. Do you have any preferences on that? I've looked at the doodle poll. You guys are all over the map in terms of your schedules. This slot was one of the best ones for most people, but there are 32 people in the class and not everybody can make every time slot. Originally, of course, there weren't going to be these real live meetings. I was just going to give you videos and stuff to read. But this actually gives me, because we're now in Zoom land, this gives me the opportunity to do something and videotape it at the same time with student discussion and questions, which I think is a lot more interesting than just me talking all the time.
Yeah.
So what I'm planning to do is do many of these and video them in place of what would have been a face-to-face class had this been a face-to-face class in the first place. But do you have any preference on longer, shorter sessions? First question.
Either one.
Well, for a short class like this, it's like not even that long. Maybe longer. Maybe I don't know. I enjoyed the long classes for the web pub series, but that was a different monster though. And
to me, it sounds like 3 hours is a very long time.
yeah,
I prefer short classes, shorter classes.
Because we've done the 3-hour classes. When I taught this face-to-face, you know, there were 3-hour classes once a week, and most of the classes I teach are 3-hour classes once a week.
Yes.
They're really tiring for teachers and students.
Yeah.
Online, it's a little different, but we have a little more flexibility. I'll probably, my guess is an hour to an hour and a half might be a good length of time.
Agreed.
Maybe a couple of those a week. I'll do a couple of those a week. Yeah, I've seen some thumbs up. A couple of those a week. Maybe try to do them at different times. And again, they'll all be videoed and posted. And I have a YouTube channel where I'm posting videos. And after this and other meetings, I will mail out that link to you. And after a while, you'll just know where to find them. Okay. So because I can't get into a whole lot of detail this morning, I'm going to give you a general overview. I want to talk about some things that relate to WordPress. I want to talk about the web in general and the course in general. But the next session, we will actually dive deeper into WordPress. But I do want to explain a couple of things before we get there. So first of all, we have the website. And by the way, I'm going to share my screen for a lot of this, so you won't just see my talking head. But I want to talk a little first. And I've also, I have not disabled you sharing screens. So when we get to places like where you're having trouble or troubleshooting or something, it may actually be helpful if you share your screen with the rest of us. But for now, you probably don't have a screen to share, or you don't want to do that. But I sent out your logins and passwords for the online discussion forum, and you should have all received those. If you haven't, let me know. There is a login and password that I've given each of you for the discussion board. That same login and password with a slight modification will also be used for your WordPress sites.
Oh.
So for example, your login might be Mary, and your password might be, you know, Juggernaut or something. And we'll use something very similar for your WordPress administrative logins and passwords. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So, so first of all, if you haven't gone to the discussion forum, the first thing I'd like you to do is, you know, maybe after today, after now, is to log in and introduce yourself to everybody else. And I will post a longer introduction of myself as well. I will reply to some of your comments. So the discussion forum will be the place outside of these meetings where much of the interaction will happen in terms of troubleshooting and questions and answers and the posting of announcements and resources. So I'm expecting that you will regularly participate and check the discussion forum. Did anybody not get that email? You should have all gotten it. I'm pretty sure all the nothing bounces when I send out email to everybody.
Are there a required number of forum posts per week?
Yeah, I'll get into that. I'll get into that in a bit. Well, I'll get into it now. So yeah, I am asking you to post a couple times a week. The nature of the post right now is a little open, but I will give you more specific topics to post on each week. Right now, I just want you to introduce yourself and maybe comment on somebody else's post. That's good for today or this week, I should say. But I will, most of the discussion forum will probably revolve around troubleshooting issues that you're having with your WordPress and trying to figure out how to do X, Y, or Z. And the nice thing about discussion forum, of course, is that, you know, students can help each other.
Exactly.
It's not, if you're used to Canvas, this is a similar kind of an interface, but it's not a segmented week by week interface. It's just a continuous stream. So there is no like week 1, the week 2, week 3 forums. It's all one large forum. I'm also using this forum for my DM60, which is the intro to HTML and CSS class. So I had originally planned to transition this class onto Canvas. But again, when the crisis hit and everything turned to craziness, I couldn't get that done. So and because my original materials were on my site, I'm leaving it on teacherjohn.com for this semester. I've taught this class before face-to-face, haven't taught it before online, and some things have changed. So I'm updating a lot of materials right now. So not everything will work if you click on the website today, but it will happen pretty shortly. Now, but the discussion forum is the place where you definitely want to at least start poking around and posting and asking questions. So that's the first thing. Any questions on that right now? Okay. I looked through your surveys, and a couple of you haven't finished those out yet. So if you haven't done exercise 1, which is the student survey, please do that. And from looking at those, it was about what I figured. You guys are all over the map. From complete beginners to, yeah, I have a WordPress site, but I'm not real, you know, I don't know too much about how the whole thing works. And what I really look at is what you wish to get out of the class, that question. And of course, you guys are all over the map on that too. So I'll try to go through and address those different concerns throughout the term. Most of you were just like, yeah, I just want to know how to do this stuff, you know. So, but if you have very specific questions, we can give you very specific answers. So the more specific the question, generally the more specific the answer. So always remember that when you're asking a question in the discussion forum.
John, I have a question.
Questions, and we love questions. Who's that?
Yeah. Amanda, this is Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Oh, you're at the beach. All right, good.
Yeah, it's on my walk last week when it wasn't raining. I tried to fill out the form twice, and it gave me an error, and it said that I didn't fill out everything.
The comment at the bottom.
I did. So I don't know if anybody else had that, or if you actually did receive it twice.
Well, I got your third one, and I saw on it that you said you tried it twice. I didn't have anybody else.
I tried it twice. You got my third one.
Oh, really? Was it you, or was it, man, somebody said that. I thought it was.
I wrote it in the comments.
Oh, it was you, Rebecca. Twice. Okay, somebody said.
And then I figured I would take a screenshot of it because I was tired of rethinking.
Yeah.
I have. The third time it was successful.
Are you sure you didn't miss a field? Because that's generally it's
The only place I missed
how it
was the
works.
additional comments.
Yeah, mine too. That happened to
Yeah.
me. And first time it spit it out at me, and
I
And you
didn't.
didn't fill in the comments. Didn't it say all fields are required on it?
Yeah, but I didn't have
It
anything
should've.
to add to my comments.
Oh,
so.
well, just
Yeah,
put
I made-
So
nothing
then
to add.
the third time
Okay.
I said it didn't work, so then it did.
Third
Oh.
time's the charm. No, generally I've used that form before. It works. I mean, it doesn't work if you don't fill out every field in the form. So
Okay. Yeah, I
sorry
didn't
about
have
that.
any comments, so I didn't put any comments in.
Yeah.
so-
But if you hit
Okay.
the back button rather than refresh the page, anytime you fill out a form, if you hit the back button, it saves what you've
Yeah.
entered. If you don't hit the back button, you have to re-enter it again.
No,
Oh, I
that
hit the
didn't
back
And
happen.
that's why when you
Sorry.
get the oops page, it says, please click the back button to continue. But if you
Yeah.
don't do it that way, you will have to re-enter everything. But if you
Yeah.
actually read what
I
it
hit the
says
back
on the oops
I
page,
hit the back button and the form cleared, so
Yeah,
no big deal.
that's
It's
why I
that
just-
should not have cleared unless your browser doesn't have a cache setting set.
Maybe
right.
not.
But anyway, I'm sorry, but it seems like it worked for most people because I've gotten a whole lot of them, and
Okay.
only a few people haven't filled that out yet.
You become concise when you get to the third try.
Yeah. My
But
answers
better
have changed.
Sorry about that. See, if I don't require fields, then people won't fill them out. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I think let's see who's here. Maybe one or two of you have existing WordPress sites. Amanda, you have one, right? And Robin has one.
I worked on two
Okay.
of them.
Okay, so one of the first questions that always comes up is, can I do my work on my own site? And the answer is no. I've set up sites for all of you, and I'm going to tell you how to get to them today. So you can do anything you want on your own site, but for the purpose of the class and the term, I'm going to we're going to look at your sites that I've set up for you. They're all under a domain name. Hello? Oh.
Are we going to be using WordPress.org where we like download it?
Oh, that's a really good question. Actually, in the past, I have used WordPress.org, and that's actually one of the changes I'm making this time because in the past, I've had people start by setting up free sites. I'm sorry, not WordPress.com is the free sites, right? WordPress.org is the commercial sites. I've had people use WordPress.com the first week, .com to set up a free site to play with it, and that was all we did the first week, and then we went into a real site. I went to WordPress.com recently to update stuff, and I noticed that it no longer seemed that you could easily sign up for a free account at WordPress.com. And that's actually one of the reasons that the next exercise isn't presented to you yet, because that was the first exercise of how to do that and go through there and play with it. And it seemed like it no longer worked. So I'm basically going to start everybody on the sites that I just set up for you. WordPress. For those of you who don't know, there's WordPress. It's very confusing. WordPress.com is different than WordPress.org, and WordPress itself is an open source public domain piece of software, and that's one of the reasons it's so popular. WordPress is used by probably more sites than any other single platform. It's one of the most it's the most popular content management system, and I've seen estimates, well over 25% of sites online are considered WordPress sites. So I don't even know. No one knows exactly how many there are, but there are many WordPress sites. It is one of the standards on the web these days, and so knowing WordPress is really it's really a good thing, whether or not you're a web designer. And I know a lot of people. We'll get into that in a minute. So let me get back to WordPress. Why you're taking the class, but WordPress.org and WordPress.com are real different. WordPress.com is where in the past you've been able to get a free site. Unless I went there recently and it looked like they took that option away. They wanted you to register a domain name or move your domain name over. Maybe I missed something, but it seemed like they made it a lot harder or impossible to do a free site there anymore. So if anybody has any insights on that, let me know. But so I've decided not to use that for this term. But I have I set up one of the things I want to talk about today is hosting and domain names and that kind of stuff, just because those questions always come up. So I want to get those out of the way first. I have set up an account on a commercial server, hostmonster.com. They're one of the large web host providers. I think they're the same company as Bluehost, which is another popular one. Different than GoDaddy, which is probably one of the most popular hosting services. And with a fairly inexpensive account on a commercial service like this, you can set up unlimited numbers of WordPress sites. So I set up 32 WordPress sites under the designcruise.com domain. And so essentially all your sites for the course will be a subdirectory of designcruise.com, but that doesn't matter. Your site will act as an independent site, and you will be the administrator of that site. So with just very minor exceptions, I think there are a few things I can tweak from the main control panel. You're really in control. You're the administrator of the site. You own the site, essentially speaking, for the term. And the site will work exactly like a site would work that was hosted somewhere else with your own domain name, which leads me to the next question. How many of you have your own domain names? 1, 2, okay, maybe half of you. Then if you already have your own domain name, you're probably fairly familiar with how the system works, although some people I know have domain names have no idea how the whole system really works. If you don't have your own domain name and you want to continue with a WordPress site after the semester is over, then you probably want to register your own domain name. Domain hosting is not the same as a domain registrar or domain registration. So there are domain hosts and domain registrars, and people usually confuse those functions most of the time because companies that do both functions want to conflate them to think that you have to stay with the same company for both functions. And that's not true. It might be fine to do that. But for example, many of the large companies, such as, for example, GoDaddy, they do both. They're both a large registrar and they're a large host. A registrar is a service where you register your domain name and that's all they do. That's all it does. You basically reserve the name for yourself. You're basically buying a piece of virtual real estate on the internet. So when you register a domain name, blah.com, duh.net, whatever it is, that's your name. Nobody else has it. You own that. You have the global rights to that. Unless you infringe on somebody's trademark, we won't get into that, but you can lose your domain name if you're infringing on somebody's trademark, which almost happened to me. So if you don't have your own domain name, at some point you probably want to register a domain name if you want to continue having WordPress sites or any sites. The alternative to registering your own domain name is, it's kind of like real estate. You can buy or you can rent. They both work. They both have advantages and disadvantages, but generally it's better to buy. If you have a website and you don't have your own domain name, you're simply on somebody else's domain name. In a sense, you're renting space on their domain name. If you have your own domain name, you control it. So the act of registering a domain name is quite simple. You pay a fee, and it's going to range from 10 or $11 a year for a .com. It might be more than that per year for things other than .com. The prices vary a bit. It's fairly a commodity service, but the prices do vary a little. Like the most expensive one I know is Network Solutions, and hopefully none of you are registered there because they charge, I don't know, $35 a year or some ridiculous amount for a domain name, where most places are like $11 a year. So if you're on Network Solutions, I suggest, you don't need to register with them. It's all the same service. You don't have to pay more than $11 a year. The registration is simply an annual fee that reserves the name for your use. That's all it does. It doesn't mean you're using it. It doesn't mean you have email. It doesn't mean you have websites. It just means you own the name. It's kind of like a vacant lot. You've bought a piece of real estate on the internet and there's nothing on it. That's your domain name, right? That's your land. Now, if you want to build on it, you need hosting. And again, some companies do both, and so they kind of make it seem like the same thing, but hosting is very different than having a domain name. Once you have your domain name registered, you need to have a hosting service, which means you can then use email and websites. So hosts host your email and your websites. And generally speaking, WordPress is pretty much included with just about every commercial, even the super cheapo $3.99 a month GoDaddy crapo special probably includes at least a WordPress site. Okay, and if you pay more than a few bucks a month, you probably get unlimited number of WordPress sites. And so sometimes it's worth it to pay more than the lowest rate, because the lowest rate usually limits you maybe to one site or one domain name. I have several accounts. I have one account that has probably 20 different domain names on it. Most of them have some kind of website, and that's just one account, and it costs me like 15 bucks a month or something, because it's the mid-level, account. So you can do a lot with a hosting account. Besides having one or more WordPress sites on your hosting account, it also gives you the ability to have your email addresses at your domain name. So whatever address at your domainname.com or whatever. And so that's really another thing. It's really interesting. I know so many people who have their own domain names, and then I look at their email and it's like at Yahoo, or it's at Google, at Gmail or something. It's like, you have your own domain name. Why are you, it's like you have your own house and you're getting your mail at somebody else's place. It's like, that's kind of weird, but whatever. So if you have your own domain name and you're not using it for your own email, it's an interesting branding issue. I would suggest something different, but I'm not a big fan of Gmail. I know everybody uses Gmail. We're forced to use Gmail at Cabrillo, and quite frankly, I don't like it all that much, but that's just me. By the way, if you want to, I can talk at you a long time. So if you want to interrupt me, you just interrupt me at this point. There's enough people here that I'll just take an audible interruption and stop. Okay. Questions?
I have a question.
Debbie, yeah, hi.
I don't know if it's going to be, if other people are going to understand what I mean yet, whether they have experience with this or not. But if we do a website on here and we want to transfer it to our own site afterwards, is it going to be difficult, unlike an HTML site where you can just put the files on any server?
Good question. It's not going to be as easy as just transferring an HTML site, a static site, but you can do it. Now,
it's more technical, isn't it?
Yeah, well, essentially you have to make a backup or archive of the site and then install that into your new site. And so a lot depends on who your host is, and how easy they make that, and how good their support is. So let me give you an example. So the sites that we have for this class are on hostmonster.com. Hostmonster's the host. If you had a Hostmonster account and you wanted to take your existing class WordPress site at the end of the term and move it over, then you could probably even get them to do it for you by calling their support, since you're going from one Hostmonster account to another. But if it's another service, they're not going to make it quite as easy. You'll have to know a little more about how to do that. That will be one of those things that at the end of the term I can go over and help you with. But the short answer is it's not as easy as just moving HTML files over, but yes, you can do it. Okay. It has to do mostly because you have a MySQL database. And so moving a MySQL database is the non-intuitive part. It's not just moving files. So good question. That help?
Okay.
So speaking of that, so what WordPress is an open source system that essentially it uses two basic pieces, and that is it uses PHP, which is a programming language, and it uses a SQL or MySQL database as the database behind it. These are open source languages, SQL, MySQL, and PHP, and they're virtually universal. Pretty much any commercial web host will have PHP for you to use, and will have MySQL databases for you to use, and they'll also have WordPress for you to use. So there's not really any limitation there into moving things from one site to another, because having the ability to have PHP and WordPress and MySQL is pretty standard. It's an internet standard. In fact, the nice thing about WordPress is it is an internet standard. In fact, it is one of the, at this point, it's one of the main standards on the internet, on the web, I should say. Cabrillo College is in the process of transitioning. It's an entire website, and it's a huge website, very complex website. It's a large organization, to a WordPress site. That's happening right now. That's in progress. And so WordPress started as a what was called a blog. And the word blog is a contraction. Anybody know where it comes from?
Weblog.
Huh?
Weblog.
Weblog, exactly. Weblog now has a different meaning, because now when you say weblog, sometimes that can mean the logs of the traffic on your website. And that's not the original meaning of weblog. Weblog was where blog comes from. It's a contraction of weblog, which is like a journal online. People would journal online. They would post, hey, I ate toast today, and whatever. Here's a picture of my avocado toast. You know, it's the way people use Facebook now. But so blogging started many years ago, and there were several good pieces of blogging software. WordPress was one of many, but WordPress quickly kind of distinguished itself as the best piece of blogging software over the years, and has now become so powerful and fully featured that it's used for many large corporations, even in terms of their whole website. So WordPress has gone from being a little piece of blogging software for people doing personal journaling to running sites for large businesses. And so one of the great things about having an understanding of WordPress is that it's such a standard and everybody uses it. So it's very easy to get support. It's very easy for people to help you with it, because there's such a large knowledge base. There are a gazillion tutorials online. There are a gazillion people out there who know the product. So it's a good thing to learn if you're doing anything on the web. Let me just finish on the hosting thing, and then I want to get back into WordPress. So if you are confused about hosting or domain name registration, you can post those questions in the forum, and I can answer them there unless you want to ask them right now. Otherwise, I do want to move into WordPress specifically. Hearing no questions. This is interesting. I can see you all in a very different way. Okay, so so WordPress. Here's how this generally works. This is a course for people who don't know or don't want to use coding. Okay, so by coding, I mean knowing HTML and CSS, which is hypertext markup language and cascading style sheets. Now, web pages are all written in HTML and CSS. Okay, so HTML is the language of a web page underneath the surface, and HTML is the guts of the web page. It is the language the web page is written in. CSS is another language that is used to style the page. So HTML was first written by Tim Berners-Lee in the turn of the 1989, 1990. CSS was added in the mid-90s. And now HTML is comparatively simple to CSS. Most of the complexity in coding is in cascading style sheets. HTML is relatively simple. We teach classes at Cabrillo. I teach them on coding, how to make web pages by hand coding. And I recommend them, not just because I teach them, but because they're really good to know. But some people don't want to go that far. I just want to make a website. I don't want to know how to code it. It's kind of like, I just want to use the calculator. I don't want to know the arithmetic. I just want to punch the buttons. So WordPress is like that. WordPress is the calculator. Okay, HTML is the arithmetic. You don't need to know the arithmetic to use the calculator. Now it helps quite a bit to know arithmetic when you're using a calculator, but you can use the calculator without knowing what's going on, and you get the results. And the same thing with WordPress. So what happens is, I teach this course, and by the end of the course, hey, this is great. I can do all these things in WordPress. I can pick my theme, and I can make pages, and I can do all this stuff and publish it and everything. And then they say, now I want to get more advanced. Now I want to customize. I want to know how to make my own themes. I want to know how to customize my site more than just these little customizations that are available to me. So what's the next course for that? And my answer is the next course for that is learning hand coding. So we don't do hand coding in this course. It's relatively easy compared to the hand coding. Hand coding is actually not that hard. But to head that question off at the pass right now, if after this you really like WordPress so much you want to like develop your own themes and you want to learn how to really get into the customization and change, tweak more than just minor tweaks, to be honest with you, to do that, you need to learn the coding. So you want to realize that I will take you up as far as you can get without knowing coding. But then if you want to get into major customizations, it's really about knowing coding. There's not really a way around that. I know some people try to tell you there is. There's not in my book. He says as a coder. So
that's what you teach in your DM60 class, right?
Yeah, that's DM60, exactly. And so, so you should just be aware that we're not going to, coding is not that hard, but WordPress is even easier than that. And coding is not as hard as programming, right? So programming is harder than coding. Coding is harder than WordPress. So this is the easy one. This is the easy piece. WordPress is very easy. It really is. There's a lot of pieces to it, but once you kind of get into it, you're not learning coding. Okay, so let's get that one out of the way. So with WordPress, just a general overview. So you've got what's called a content management system, or a CMS. And I have to remember when I'm doing these to speak slowly and clearly and enunciate. Do you know why? Because when I save the video and then I upload it to YouTube, YouTube is going to do its automated AI closed captioning.
Yeah.
And if I talk really fast and don't pronounce my syllables correctly, it really comes out with some weird transcripts. Yeah. So what you'll notice is what happens is I post this. I put it on YouTube, not in. Some people put them in Zoom. I put them in YouTube. It doesn't really make much difference. And then probably later in that same day, the transcript appears. I guess YouTube has some kind of automated transcript service, and it actually will attach you can click on the closed captioning button and see the text while I'm speaking. And it works pretty well, but if you really muddle your words, it doesn't work quite as well. So if I appear to be enunciating and talking slowly, that's why. Okay. It's not normally the way I talk. Those of you who have had me in face-to-face classes know that I tend to drink a lot of coffee and I tend to speak very fast. And so I've been consciously catching myself. So if I tend to zoom, not the product, too fast, then just let me know and I'll slow down. But I'm making a really good effort, and I've only had 1 cup of coffee so far today. By my night class, watch out, because I have a 6 o'clock DM60 class, and those folks are in for it. Okay, so a content management system such as WordPress is just that. It manages content. It makes it easy for multiple